My parents sent me a photo of their new house, captioned, "The family that stuck together." I was the only one not in the picture. When they showed up weeks later asking for cash to finish it, they triggered a trap I set years ago, and they never even saw it coming. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The text message arrived on a Tuesday, which was, by all accounts, one of the worst days of my professional life. I was 39, a senior project manager at a major construction firm, and I was currently helming a $50 million downtown high-rise project that was threatening to implode. A subcontractor had just walked off the site, the city inspector was threatening to pull our permits, and I'd been in back-to-back crisis meetings for 10 hours. I was running on stale coffee, adrenaline, and the sharp, acidic burn of stress in my stomach. I finally collapsed onto my sofa at 9 p.m., my work heels kicked off by the door, my blazer still on. My phone, which had been buzzing angrily in my pocket all day, finally got my attention. I had a dozen missed emails, but the notification at the top was a group text from my mother, Margaret. I opened it expecting a simple "How are you?" or perhaps another complaint about the weather. Instead, my screen was filled with a bright, sunny photograph. It was my parents, Richard and Margaret, standing on the porch of a brand-new, sprawling modern farmhouse I had never seen before. They were beaming, my father's arms slung proudly around my mother's shoulders. But they weren't alone. They were surrounded. My brother, John, and his wife, Lucy, were on their other side, holding up champagne glasses. My aunts, my uncles, even my distant cousins, everyone was there. A huge, sold sign was staked in the manicured lawn, with a "Welcome Home" banner draped over the railing. It was a beautiful picture. A picture of a milestone. A picture of the entire family gathered to celebrate my parents' new dream home. Except for me. My eyes scanned the crowd again, a cold sickness rising faster than the stress acid had. I wasn't there. I hadn't been invited. I didn't even know they were moving. The last I'd heard, they were perfectly happy in the house I'd grown up in. Then I saw the caption my mother had added to the group text, a text I was clearly meant to see. "Finally in our new dream home. So wonderful to celebrate with the family that stuck together. We are so blessed." The family that stuck together. I read the words 5, 6, 10 times. My vision blurred. It wasn't an oversight. It wasn't a mistake. It was a statement. A deliberate, calculated public exclusion. The family, as in the real family, the one that stuck together. Which meant I was the one who didn't. Me, Laura, the one who had co-signed John's first car. The one who had paid my parents' mortgage for 6 months when my father, Richard, was laid off. The one who had personally, meticulously, and aggressively managed their retirement portfolio after my brothers, consulting, business almost bankrupted them. I stared at the photo until the smiling faces turned into grotesque masks. My brother John, raising his glass, his eyes already calculating his next financial request. My sister-in-law Lucy, her phone in her other hand, probably already posting this to her brand ambassador social media page. And my parents, my 60-something-year-old parents, looking happier than I had ever seen them, surrounded by everyone but the one person who had actually kept their lives afloat. My phone buzzed again. It was a text from John in the same group chat. "Amazing day, Mom. You and Dad deserve it. So glad we could all make this happen for you." Wait. My fingers trembled. I wanted to type, "What is this?" I wanted to scream, "How could you?" I wanted to demand an explanation. Instead, I did nothing. I pressed the power button and the screen went black, plunging the room back into silence. I sat there in the dark, the echoes of their celebration ringing in my ears. I didn't reply. I didn't call. I didn't shed a single tear. I just let the cold, hard realizations settle into my bones. They had drawn a line. They had built a new house and a new life, and they had left me on the other side of the property line. The betrayal was so sharp, so profound, it completely eclipsed the chaos of my workday. The project downtown could burn to the ground for all I cared. My real foundation, the one I thought was built on bedrock, had just been revealed as nothing but sand. And the tide was coming in. The first few days were a blur of compartmentalization. At work, I was a machine. I was ruthless, efficient, and cold. I solved the subcontractor dispute by threatening a lawsuit that my firm's legal team could absolutely back up. I walked the city inspector through a revised safety protocol I'd stayed up until 3 a.m. drafting. I was Laura, the senior project manager, the woman who built skyscrapers. My professional life was a fortress of concrete and steel, and I retreated into it. My personal life, however, was a pile of rubble. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart leaped into my throat, but it was never them. The group chat remained silent, a digital monument to my exclusion. No one called to say, "Oh my goodness, Laura, we completely forgot to invite you." No one texted to ask why I hadn't responded. My silence was met with their silence. It was a new, terrifying reality. They had celebrated, posted their victory, and moved on. On Friday, I finally cracked. The silence was louder than any argument. I needed to hear their voice. I needed to see if they would even acknowledge what they had done. I called my mother. It rang 4 times, and I was about to hang up when she answered, her voice breathless and artificially bright. "Oh, Laura, hello, dear. I was just helping Lucy pick out paint swatches for the new guest room." The casual, happy way she said it, the new guest room, was a tiny, sharp jab. "Mom," I said, my voice flatter than I intended. I saw the photo you sent." There was a beat of silence. Not confusion, not guilt. It was the silence of someone waiting. "Oh, good. It's just beautiful, isn't it? Your father is so happy. I haven't seen him this relaxed in years. John and Lucy found the most perfect lot for us, just 10 minutes from their apartment." You sold the house," I stated. "The house I grew up in. The house whose leaky roof I'd paid to replace 5 years prior." "Well, yes, dear," she trilled. "It was all so fast. John said the market was perfect, and Lucy said the old place just had negative energy. And I think she was right. This new place is all one level, so much better for your father's knees." "And the caption," I pressed, my knuckles white on the phone, "the family that stuck together." The manufactured brightness in her voice instantly chilled. "Well, I just meant it was so nice to have everyone who could make it. We were all together, helping your father and me with this new chapter." The emphasis was unmistakable. "You're always so terribly busy, Laura. We all know you have that massive project. We didn't want to bother you with all the packing and, family things." Family things, as if I were a distant cousin or a work acquaintance. Not the daughter who had untangled her brother's IRS nightmare. Not the daughter who had funded her father's hobby, electrical business that never turned a profit. "Bother me," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "Mom, you sold your house and built a new one. You didn't just bother me, you erased me." "Oh, Laura, don't be so dramatic," she snapped, the victimhood rising in her tone. "It's not all about you. It was a family decision. John and Lucy have been absolute saints, handling everything. You haven't even offered to come see it." "I wasn't invited," I said, the words tasting like ash. "I wasn't even told." "Well, you're being told now," she said impatiently. "Honestly, I have to run. Lucy is here with the swatches. We'll have you over for dinner, sometime, once we're settled." She hung up. I stared at the call-ended screen. She hadn't apologized. She had doubled down. She had, in her own passive-aggressive way, confirmed everything. I was the outsider, the ATM, the busy one who was only good for a crisis, but not for a celebration. I felt a sudden, icy calm settle over me. The hurt was still there, a deep, throbbing bruise, but something else was crystallizing beneath it. Anger, pure, cold, structural anger. My mother, my father, my brother, they had made a family decision. They had handled everything. They had built their new life on their own. A small, grim smile touched my lips. "Okay," I whispered to the empty room. "Okay." They thought I was just the busy daughter, the one who was good with spreadsheets and contracts, but disconnected from the family things. They thought the money I'd saved them, the disasters I'd averted, were just things I did, like a service. They had no idea how I had done it. They had no idea about the structures I had put in place to protect them from themselves. They had forgotten one crucial thing, and I had a feeling, as they settled into their beautiful new house, they were going to be reminded of it very, very soon. To understand my family, you have to understand my brother, John. John is 36, but in many ways, he is still 19. He is charming, handsome, and possesses an almost supernatural ability to fail upwards, cushioned by my parents' blind adoration. He is the golden child. I am the responsible one. Those were our roles, set in stone before I even knew what a mortgage was. John's list of careers was staggering. He was a consultant, an entrepreneur, a day. Why trader, and for a brief, disastrous 6-month period, a lifestyle guru. Each venture ended the same way, with him in a mountain of debt and my parents liquidating a CD or, more recently, calling me. The worst was 8 years ago. John, then 28, had convinced my parents to invest a significant portion of their retirement savings into his fintech startup. It was, of course, a complete sham. The business folded in under a year, taking $75,000 of their money with it. They were devastated. Richard was facing forced retirement from his electrician job due to his knees, and Margaret's part-time admin salary wasn't enough. They were on the brink of losing the house. That's when I stepped in. I was 31, just promoted to junior project manager. I took a personal loan to cover their mortgage arrears. I sat them down at their kitchen table, spread out all their bills, and gave them the hardest truth of their lives. They were 3 months from foreclosure, and John was the reason. The most painful part was that they defended him. He just had bad luck, my father, Richard, had mumbled, unable to look me in the eye. He's just creative, my mother had wept. Creative doesn't pay the bills, ID said, my voice like steel. This stops, now. I spent the next 2 months cleaning up the mess. I consolidated their debts. I moved what was left of their retirement savings, a paltry sum, into a high-yield, low-risk account, and I made them sign paperwork. As a project manager, I live by contracts. I drew up a legal document, a document I had my own lawyer review, and I made them sign it. Then, about 4 years ago, John met Lucy. Lucy, the brand ambassador. She was 30, flawlessly put together, and radiated a kind of vacant, polished ambition. She ran a social media account that seemed to consist entirely of her taking pictures of expensive lattes and handbags she would tag, but never, I noticed, claim to own. She saw my parents not as in-laws, but as a resource, and she saw me as the dragon guarding it. Lucy's influence on my family was immediate and insidious. Suddenly, my practical, frugal mother started talking about manifesting abundance and negative energy. My father, who used to be proud of his skilled trade, started making disparaging comments about my corporate job, echoing things I'd heard John mutter. "You're always so transactional, Laura," Lucy told me once, smiling sweetly over a Thanksgiving dinner I had paid for. "Family isn't about spreadsheets, it's about vibes." "Vibes don't keep the lights on, Lucy," I'd replied, and she'd flinched, looking at me as if I'd just sworn in church. From then on, I was difficult. I was judgmental. I was the family wet blanket. When I'd advised my parents against giving John and Lucy $10,000 for their destination wedding, I was accused of being jealous. When I refused to invest in Lucy's new line of essential oils, I was unsupportive. I see it clearly now. This new house wasn't just a house. It was a coup. It was John and Lucy's masterpiece. They had convinced my parents to sell the family home, the one asset I didn't control, and pour every last cent of their equity into a new property. They'd surrounded them with the supportive family, the ones who didn't ask hard questions. They had physically, and now emotionally, moved my parents into their camp, isolating them from me. That photograph wasn't just a celebration, it was a declaration of independence. They had finally, successfully, cut out the transactional daughter. They were a real family now, running on vibes and, I suspected, the last fumes of their home equity. They had built their new fortress, and they truly believed in their delusional, manifested new reality that they no longer needed me. They thought the money was theirs. They thought the well was endless. They had forgotten who built the well. For 2 weeks, I lived with that cold, simmering anger. The phone call with my mother had drawn the battle lines. They had made their move. Now, I would make mine. I am a project manager. I don't just build skyscrapers, I manage risk. I anticipate problems 3, 6, and 12 months down the line. I deal in facts, in numbers, and in the unglamorous, ironclad reality of contracts. And the family problem was now just another project. Restoration of boundaries. I didn't get sad, I got strategic. The first phase was information gathering. I waited until a quiet Saturday morning. I poured a cup of coffee, opened my laptop, and pulled up the secure file on my personal drive labeled RF Trust. Richard and Margaret Family Trust. 8 years ago, after John's fintech disaster, I hadn't just consolidated their debts. I had moved what was left of their savings and the small inheritance my mother had received into an irrevocable trust. It wasn't a huge amount, but it was enough, if managed properly, to supplement their social security and cover their property taxes and utilities for the rest of their lives. My parents, terrified of their own financial ruin and John's recklessness, had readily agreed. The trust was designed to protect them from themselves. It paid their essential, recurring bills automatically. But the terms, which my lawyer had drafted with a surgeon's precision, were explicit. Any non-essential withdrawal, any lump sum payment, any distribution of principal over $1,000 required the written approval of the sole trustee. That trustee, of course, was me. They had forgotten this. In the bliss of their new vibe, fueled by the cash out from selling their old home, they had forgotten that their entire financial safety net was locked in a vault, and I held the only key. Now, it was time to see if they'd started rattling the bars. I dialed the number for David Merrill, our family's financial advisor. David was a no-nonsense, old-school numbers guy who co-managed the trust's investments. He was the only other person who knew its full structure. "Laura," he answered, his voice crisp. "I was wondering when I'd hear from you." My blood went cold. "What's going on, David?" "Your parents are in their new house, I hear. Beautiful place from the pictures." "So you've heard from them." There was a pause. David was a professional. He wouldn't typically discuss one client with another, but the trust structure made me his legal point of contact. "I have," he said carefully. "Margaret called last week. She was insistent. She wanted to know the process for liquidating $30,000 from the trust's principal." 30,000, my breath hitched. "And what did you tell her?" "I told her what the trust agreement stipulates. That it's an irrevocable trust, not a checking account. I told her the funds are designated for their long-term essential care and that any principal distribution would require a formal review and signature from the trustee." Her response, he sighed, was that the trustee was her daughter and it was just a formality. "And then," I asked, already knowing the answer. "And then, 2 days later, I got a call from your brother, John." "Of course you did." He was less polite. He demanded I release his parents' money. He told me they needed it for essential home completions and that I was obstructing them. He threatened to report me to the financial board. "And what did you tell him?" "I told him," David said, a hint of steel in his voice, "that he was not party to the trust, that I could not discuss its holdings with him, and that any further communication would need to go through you, the trustee." He used some rather colorful language and hung up. There it was, the entire picture, illuminated in an instant. The family decision was a financial house of cards. They had sold the old house, spent every single cent of the equity on the down payment, and built of this new, oversized dream home. They had probably been assured by John and Lucy that any overages or finishing touches could just be pulled from their retirement money. And now the bills were coming due. The builder needed to be paid for the basement. The landscaper needed to be paid for the sod. And the trust, my trust, was the only money left. They had spent themselves into a corner. They had celebrated their freedom from me, not realizing they were more chained to my decisions than ever before. "Thank you, David," I said, my voice perfectly calm. "You handled that exactly right. Please continue to direct all inquiries to me." "Will do, Laura, and, for what it's worth, you did the right thing setting it up this way. You saved them from this exact scenario years ago. Looks like you're about to do it again." I hung up the phone. The investigation was complete. Phase 1 was over. I looked at the black screen of my phone, at the group text still sitting there, a monument to their arrogance. The family that stuck together. I closed my laptop. All I had to do now was wait. They had built their trap. Now they would have to walk into it, and I would be there, waiting on the other side. The call came 4 days later. It wasn't my mother, with her practiced, airy manipulation. It was my father, Richard. He was the enforcer, the one who used blunt force and anger to get what he wanted. His name flashing on my screen meant they were done asking nicely. "Laura," he barked, not even waiting for me to say hello. "Hi, Dad, how are you?" "We're fine," he snapped. "Listen, your mother and I are a little short on the final payment for the builder. He's finishing the basement, and we just need to move some money around. David Merrill over at the investment office is being difficult." "Difficult how?" I asked, my voice monotone. I was inspecting a blueprint at my desk, and I didn't even look up. "He's giving us some runaround about trustees and signatures. It's our money, Laura. We need you to call him and tell him to release $30,000. We'll need it by Friday." It wasn't a request, it was an order. He was speaking to me like a disobedient employee, not his daughter. The sheer, unadulterated entitlement of it was breathtaking. "I'm afraid I can't do that, Dad." The silence on the other end of the line was heavy, like a gathering storm. "What did you just say?" I said, "I can't do that. I spoke to David. I've reviewed the trust agreement. The funds are for your essential living expenses. Property taxes, utilities, medical care. They are not for, and I quote, finishing the basement." "It's part of the house," he roared, his voice immediately escalating. "The house is an essential expense. What is wrong with you? It's our money." "Actually," I said, finally putting the blueprint down and giving the call my full attention. "It's not anymore. It's the trust's money. And 8 years ago, you and Mom signed a legally binding document, a document I designed, that gave me sole authority as trustee to protect that money. You signed that authority over to me. You did it to stop John from bankrupting you." You're bringing that up now," he sputtered, blindsided. "You're the one asking for $30,000 for a basement, Dad. A basement that, last I checked, you don't need. A basement that, I'm willing to bet, is actually for John and Lucy's influencer studio or consulting office." I heard a sharp inhale, a direct hit. "You ungrateful," he started, his voice cracking with fury. "After everything we've done for you, we gave you a roof over your head, And I interrupted, my voice as cold and hard as the steel beams in my high-rise, "am the one who has kept a roof over your head for the last decade. I paid your mortgage arrears. I clawed back what was left of your savings from John's last scam. I set up this trust so you would never be in this position. And here you are in this position because you went behind my back and let John and Lucy talk you into this. This monument to your bad judgment. You're trying to control us," he shouted. "It's our retirement." "It's your survival," I shot back. "And as trustee, I have a legal, fiduciary duty to protect the trust's principal for its intended purpose, your long-term care. Finishing a basement for your 36-year-old son is not that. The request is denied." I heard a muffled sound, and then my mother's voice was on the line, high-pitched and hysterical. Laura, what are you doing to your father? He's red in the face. You're trying to give him a heart attack." "I'm explaining the legal document you both signed, Mom." "This is unbelievable," she shrieked. "We built this beautiful home for the family, And you, my own daughter, are holding our money hostage. Lucy was right. She said you were jealous. She said you would try to sabotage this. So I was the saboteur. Not John, who had stolen from them. Not Lucy, who was encouraging them to live beyond their means. Me, the one who had built the lifeboat and was now being accused of trying to sink the ship. "Mom," I said, my patience gone, evaporating in a puff of smoke. "You sent me a picture of my entire family, captioned the family that stuck together, and I was not in it. You didn't invite me. You didn't tell me. You made a family decision without me. So here's my decision as the person you put in charge of your finances. You built this new life without me. You're going to have to figure out how to pay for it without me. The trust is closed for withdrawals." I hung up. My hand was shaking, not from fear, but from adrenaline. The first wave had hit the seawall and the wall had held. I knew this wasn't the end. This was just the first confrontation. The badly executed threats had failed. They had lost their primary weapon, my guilt. Now they would be desperate. And I knew, as surely as I knew the properties of curing concrete, that the next time they wouldn't call. They would show up. The silence that followed the phone call was heavier and more toxic than before. I knew my parents, John and Lucy, were in a state of frantic panic. They had hit the financial wall I had built, and now they were scrambling. My guess was confirmed 3 days later, when I received a registered letter from a law firm I didn't recognize. It was a cease and desist, filled with flimsy legal threats. It accused me of unlawful conversion of assets and elder financial abuse, demanding I immediately dissolve the trust and release all funds to its beneficiaries, Richard and Margaret. The letter was so amateurish, so full of bluster and misused legal terms, that it had John's fingerprints all over it. He had clearly found some bottom-feeding lawyer to write a scary letter, hoping I'd panic. I am a project manager who deals with billion-dollar contracts and teams of corporate lawyers. I was not going to panic. I simply forwarded the letter to my own attorney, the same one who had drafted the trust, and asked her to handle it. She called me back an hour later, laughing. "Laura," she said, "this is garbage. The trust is irrevocable. The only way they can remove you as trustee is to prove in court that you are medically incompetent or actively stealing from the trust, which, since you're the only one funding half of it and preventing them from draining it, is the exact opposite of the truth. I'll send them a response that will make them go away." But this desperate, sloppy legal attack told me everything I needed to know. They were completely and totally out of money. The $30,000 for the basement was just the beginning. They were in a hole so deep, they were trying to dynamite their way out. I needed the full picture. I called David Merrill back. "David," I said, "I need to do a full audit. I've just received a legal threat. I need to know the exact state of their finances. What's left of the home sale proceeds? Where did it all go?" "I was afraid of this," he said grimly. "Give me 24 hours. The next day, a password-protected PDF landed in my inbox. It was a full financial workup David had managed to piece together by looking at the accounts the trust paid into. I had to sit down as I read it. The numbers were staggering. They had sold the old house, which was fully paid off, for $550,000. A massive windfall. But the new house, the lot John and Lucy had found for them, was in a high-end development and had cost $825,000. They had taken out a new $275,000 mortgage at a terrible interest rate, clearly a rush job. But that wasn't the worst of it. The closing costs, the upgrades, the initial landscaping. David's report showed a terrifyingly fast cash bleed. But the most sickening part was a series of large wire transfers from my parents' personal checking account before the trust had been notified of the new mortgage. One transfer for $40,000 to J&L Consulting, LLC, John's sham company. Another for $15,000 to Lucy's personal account, with the memo design fee. A $22,000 charge from a luxury car dealership. They hadn't just built a new house. They had financed John and Lucy's entire lifestyle. My parents, in their 60s, had taken on a massive new mortgage and blown their life savings in less than 6 months, all to fund their golden child and his greedy wife. The $30,000 for the basement wasn't a finishing touch. It was a desperate attempt to pay a contractor who was probably, at this very moment, threatening to put a lien on their brand-new, half-built dream home. They hadn't just excluded me. They had replaced me with a pair of grifters who happened to be related to me. I printed every single page of David's report, the wire transfers, the new mortgage agreement, the old trust document. I put them all in a neat, leather-bound portfolio, the same kind I used for presenting to executive boards. I was no longer just angry. I was cold. I was a structural engineer who had just found a fatal foundational crack, and I was about to condemn the building. I didn't have to wait long. That Friday evening, as I was just getting home from work, my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole. It was Richard and Margaret. They were standing on my doormat, their faces pale and set. They looked like they were marching into a battle they already knew they had lost. I took a deep breath, opened my portfolio on the hall table, and then opened the door. "Laura," my mother began, her voice trembling with manufactured tears before I even said hello. "We need to talk. This has gone too far." "I agree," I said, stepping aside. I didn't smile. I didn't offer them a drink. I just let them into the entryway of my condo, a space that was clean, organized, and, unlike their new house, financially secure. They stood awkwardly in the foyer. My father, Richard, was vibrating with a barely contained rage. His pride had been deeply wounded. He, the patriarch, had been forced to come here, hat in hand. My mother, Margaret, immediately started to cry. "To think," she sobbed, dabbing at her dry eyes with a tissue, "that my own daughter would treat us this way. We're your parents. We could lose the house." "You're not going to lose the house, Mom," I said, my voice quiet. "The trust will continue to pay the utilities and property taxes, just as it always has. It will even cover the interest on your new, ill-advised mortgage." "The interest?" Richard exploded. "What about the builder? He's threatening to put a lien on the house. We need the cash to finish the basement. We need the $30,000. We need a bit of cash to finish the basement," Margaret rephrased, as if the smaller words would somehow soften the demand. I just stared at them. This was it, the moment from the title. The moment they had been building toward ever since they'd let John and Lucy sink their claws into them. I took a slow, steadying breath. "You built that house without me," I said, my voice echoing in the quiet hall. "You'll have to finish it without me." Richard's face went from pale to a deep, alarming crimson. "You," he roared, taking a step toward me. "You have no right. It is our money. I am your father, and you will show me respect." "Respect," I said, my voice rising, finally letting the ice crack. "Was it respectful when you sold my childhood home without telling me? Was it respectful when you sent me a photo of my entire family, bragging about how you stuck together, while deliberately excluding me? Was that respect, Dad?" "We didn't want to bother you," my mother shrieked. "You're always working, you hate family things, you're too busy and important for us." "I was busy," I shot back, "paying for your mistakes. I was busy building a career so I could fix the financial holes your golden child keeps digging for you. And the one time I set up a system to protect you, you treat me like a villain for enforcing it." "This is not about John," Richard yelled. "This is entirely about John," I thundered, walking to the hall table and grabbing the leather portfolio. I slammed it down on the coffee table. "You want to talk about money? Let's talk about money." I opened it. Page 1, the signed, notarized front page of the Richard and Margaret Family Trust. "Here," I said, "is the document you both signed, giving me, Laura, sole fiduciary control as trustee. And here," I flipped the page, "is the clause you clearly forgot, stating all non-essential principal distributions are at the trustee's discretion. I am exercising my discretion. Request denied." My mother stared at the paper as if it were written in a foreign language. We didn't know it meant that. Oh, you knew, I said. You just didn't care because you never thought you'd need the money. You thought the home equity was your new magic bank, but you forgot about your son. I flipped the page again, the wire transfer receipts. $40,000, I said, pointing, to J&L Consulting, a company with no clients, no product, and no purpose other than to siphon your retirement. $15,000 to Lucy for a design fee. I'm a project manager, Mom. I manage million-dollar build-outs. A design fee for picking out paint swatches? It's theft, plain and simple. Margaret's face went white. Richard looked like I had punched him in the gut. You took out a new mortgage in your late 60s, I pressed on, and you gave almost $60,000 of it, my inheritance, your security, to your son and his wife so they could buy a new car and play influencer. And now you have the audacity to come to my house and demand I liquidate your safety net to finish their basement studio? You didn't just exclude me, you robbed yourselves to pay him. The silence was absolute. My mother sank onto the edge of my sofa, her fake tears replaced by real, gulping sobs of terror. My father just stood there, speechless, his entire world of pride and entitlement collapsing around him. The doorbell rang again, this time a series of sharp, impatient jabs. Before I could move, the front door swung open. John and Lucy. They had clearly been waiting in the car. "What is taking so long?" John demanded, storming in. "Did you get the money? That builder is calling me every." He stopped dead when he saw my face, and the open portfolio on the table. "John," I said, my voice dripping with contempt. "Perfect timing. We were just going over your consulting invoices." Lucy's eyes, wide and darting, landed on the bank statements. Her perfectly curated mask of good vibes shattered. You have no right to show them that. That's private." "Is it?" I asked. "It looks to me like it's my parents' money. The money they're now begging me for because you two parasites bled them dry." "You did this," John suddenly screamed, his charm vanishing, revealing the spoiled, angry child beneath. He pointed a shaking finger at me. "You've always been jealous. You've always hated me. You've been trying to turn them against me for years." "You don't need my help, John," I said calmly. "These bank statements do the job just fine. You're a 36-year-old con artist, and you just bankrupted our parents." That was when my father finally moved. The realization of what had been done, the full, devastating scope of it, hit him all at once. His rage, previously directed at me, swiveled and locked onto its true target. He growled, his voice low and terrifying, turning on John. A consulting fee, $40,000. "Dad, I can explain," John stammered, taking a step back. It was an investment, it's." "You lied to me," Richard roared, advancing on him. "You told me that was for materials. You let me come here and beg my daughter for money you already stole." "Get out," my father bellowed, pointing at the door. "Both of you, get out of my sight, get out." John and Lucy scrambled, tripping over each other to escape the storm they had created. The door slammed shut behind them, leaving the four of us, or what was left of us, in the ringing silence. My mother was rocking back and forth on the sofa, whispering, "Oh, God. Oh, God, what have we done?" My father stood in the middle of my living room, a broken old man, the fury drained out of him, replaced by a vast, empty horror. I calmly closed the portfolio. "The trust," I said, "will pay the new mortgage, it will pay the utilities, you will not lose the house." My mother looked up, a desperate, pathetic hope in her eyes. And the basement." "The basement," I said, picking up the portfolio, "will remain a concrete shell, a permanent reminder for you to enjoy in your new dream home. Now, I think it's time for you to go." My parents left without another word. My father didn't look at me, my mother couldn't. I watched from my window as they got into their modest, but not new, car and drove away. There was no triumph, no satisfaction, just the profound, hollow ache of an amputation. I had finally, surgically, removed the toxic parts of my family. It hurt, but I knew it was necessary for my own survival. The aftermath was a series of quiet, legal, and financial moves. My lawyer sent a blistering response to John's attorney, which included copies of the wire transfers to J&L Consulting. The legal threats stopped immediately. The builder, as I'd predicted, placed a lien on my parents' new house. My parents were trapped. They were financially ruined, with no cash, no savings, and no equity. They were social pariahs in their new neighborhood, the couple with the brand-new, half-finished house. And they were, for the first time in their lives, completely and totally under the thumb of their son's consequences. John and Lucy's downfall was as swift as it was predictable. With the bank of Mom and Dad permanently closed, their influencer lifestyle evaporated. The leased luxury car was repossessed. Their apartment, which I'm sure my parents had been supplementing, was lost. The last I heard from a gossiping aunt, they had moved into a cramped one-bedroom rental 2 towns over, and John was working at a big-box hardware store. Lucy's social media went dark. It seems vibes don't pay the rent. My parents and I did not speak for almost a year. The trust did its job, paying their bills like clockwork, a silent, monthly reminder of my control and their folly. Then one Saturday my mother called me. Her voice was small, thin, and stripped of all its manipulation. "Laura," she said, the trust, it paid for your father's heart medication. It was very expensive. I wanted to say thank you." "That's what it's for, Mom," I said, my voice not unkind, just neutral. "The basement is it's still concrete," she offered, a pathetic attempt at connection. We put boxes down there." "Okay, Mom." There was a long pause. We were wrong, Laura, we were so wrong. John, he really hurt us." It wasn't a full apology. It wasn't the cathartic, movie moment breakdown I might have once craved. But it was the truth. It was a start. I didn't rush to forgive them. I didn't invite them over for dinner. But I did eventually meet my father for a cup of coffee in a neutral location. He looked 10 years older. He talked about the weather. He talked about his new medication. He never mentioned John, and he never mentioned the house. But as we were leaving, he put his hand on my arm, his old, calloused electrician's hand. "You're a good daughter, Laura," he mumbled, looking at the floor. You're built right." It was the closest I would ever get to "I'm sorry," and the closest I'd ever gotten to "I'm proud of you." I accepted it. I am still the trustee. I am still the project manager of their lives, but now from a safe, professional distance. The boundaries are no longer lines in the sand, they are reinforced concrete walls. My family that stuck together is smaller now. It's me. It's my close friends. It's the life I've built for myself on my own terms. The house still stands, I'm sure, with its beautiful facade and its dark, empty, unfinished basement. A perfect metaphor for the family that built it.